as part of the reminder. If you believe in the Quran, then you must believe God preserved the Bible. But if the Bible's corrupt, then He has failed to preserve the reminder, because the Bible's part of the reminder that Allah sent down. There's no way of escaping it, and I challenge any Muslim to call in and refute that assertion. Now, as far as the various Arabic versions, it is a fact of Islamic scholarship, and you can read any of the sources produced by Muslims on the sciences of the Quran, that when Uthman standardized one Arabic text, that Arabic text was transmitted through various Arabic versions that were not necessarily uniform, that had variant readings among one another. Let me read some sources to prove it. So I'm speaking of the Arabic script that Uthman standardized. Although he standardized one script, he made several copies. According to Muslim sources, those copies were not in 100% agreement. Variants occurred during the copying among them, and as they were transmitted, more variants arose, until finally, late in Islamic history, they decided to standardize 7 Arabic versions. 7 Arabic versions, transmitted through 2 ways, for a total of 14 Arabic versions of the Uthmanic text. Talk about confusion. Just even talking about that is confusing. Let me read the source. This comes from the Concise Encyclopedia of Islam, page 324. Concise Encyclopedia of Islam, speaking of the Quran. We're not talking about English here. We're talking about variations among the Arabic Qur'ans that were produced. Certain variant readings existed, and indeed persisted and increased as the companions who had memorized the text died, and because of the basic Arabic script lacking vowel signs. Is that not what you said?
Yes.
That the Arabic lacked vowel signs? Here's a Muslim source admitting this.
Yes.
And even necessary diacriticals to distinguish between certain consonants. The original text didn't have that.
Right.
So it was up to the person to decide what this text meant.
Well, the actual letters were in question, whether it would be like a noon, which would just have a dot on top, or a yeh, which is a completely different letter, which is the same shape, but 2 dots on the bottom, or a teh,
which were added later, those dots.
Yeah, they added the, so there's huge opportunity for interpretation as to what the text actually said.
In fact, here's the source says that the basic Arabic text was inadequate.
Right.
That's what it says. It's not my words.
Right.
Page 324 of the Concise Encyclopedia of Islam. Now notice, when they standardized the 7 Arabic versions, transmitted through 2 ways for a total of 14. In the 4th Islamic century, 300 years after the Hijrah, 4th Islamic century, it was decided by whom? By Allah? By His Messenger, by Jibreel?
Right.
According to the Muslims, there were no prophets or messengers receiving wahi. To have recourse to return to readings, qiraat, handed down from 7 authoritative readers, qurra. In order, moreover, to ensure accuracy of transmission, 2 transmitters, for a total of 14, were accorded to each. There resulted from the 7 basic texts, al-qiraat as-sab, the 7 readings, each having 2 transmitted versions, with only minor variations in phrasing. Then it gives the names of the 7. Nafi, Ibn Kathir, Abu Amr al-Ala, Ibn Amr, Hamza, al-Qisai, Abu Bakr, Asim. So even the Arabic text that you have is not one standard text. There's actually 7 versions of the Arabic with variant readings among them, transmitted through 2 ways for a total of 14. And one more source, because I know we have callers. This one comes from a Muslim. It's Islamic Question Online with Mufti Ibrahim Desai. Mufti Ibrahim Desai. Notice what he says here. Question 14508. Question 14508. You can go to his website. It's an online fatwa. He answers questions. Notice what he says. During the first 2 centuries, notice this, Joseph, Pastor Joseph.
Yes.
There were approximately 25 different qirats. Not only 7, there were 25. But they were not compiled. It was only in the 3rd century, 200 years after the Hijrah, that Imam Abu Ubaid Qasim ibn Salam compiled the first book on Qiraat, Kitab al-Qiraat. Thereafter, in the 4th century, Imam Abu Bakr Ahmed ibn Musa ibn Abbas ibn Mujahid compiled a kitab, namely Kitab al-Sabah, in which he gathered 7 Qiraat which were common in his era and commonly known as Qiraat al-Sabah. Out of 25, he chose 7. Out of 25, he chose 7. Imam Abu Muhammad Maqi states that there were approximately 70 other qira'ats. However, he chose only 7 qira'ats. Many great Aimah disagreed with Imam Ibn Mujahid of confining the qira'ats to 7 and leaving out the other qira'ats. So not all Muslims agreed. Why are you only standardizing 7 and rejecting the rest? Talk about chaos and confusion.
Absolutely.
And how much of this do Muslims in the United States know? How many of this has how much of this has your imam told you? How much of this have your parents told you? How much of this have your sheikhs told you? None. What have they told you? Perfect preservation from the time of Muhammad when it was handed down and passed on perfectly down to the letter. Absolute nonsense, my friends.
By the way, Uthman, the third caliph, actually said when he received a copy of this final edition that there are faults in the language of it. And that's
so did Aisha.
Yes, and Aisha as well. And I encourage you once again to go to answering-islam.org and look this book up, A Perfect Quran. They have the entire text, and it shows on page 37 in the print form that there is it mentions all of the different versions, but he takes the Hafs and the Warsh, two particular versions, and he shows examples of where the letters are actually different. He points out that the reading transmitted by the Warshan is widespread in Africa except Egypt, whereas now in almost all other parts of the Muslim world, the reading transmitted by the Hafs is observed. And we don't have time to go to it, but you go online and you will find that there are, he's got at least 15 different ayahs where the actual consonants, the actual letters in the Arabic from the Hafs and the Warsh. These are just 2 of the, how many that they said, 14 or 7?
Yes,
these are just 2 versions that are still out there today in Arabic where the actual letters differ, and that means the words are actually different. Here's just a few of the references. Surah 5, 53, 9, 107, 18, 36, 40, 26, 42, 30, 57, 24, 26, 217, so forth and so on, and that's just in 2 versions. This is after Uthman. So please.
Until this day.
Yeah.
And now a Muslim may say, and I know we have callers.
Yeah.
And I just want to they'll say, well, those are minor variations that don't affect the meaning. And I would agree for the most part, many, if not most, do not affect meaning. However, when Christians say that despite the variant readings of the Bible, it still reads the same, and we know that God has preserved the message of the original authors, the Muslims say, well, no, if it's not perfect preservation, free of variant readings, then you can't trust the Bible. Well, by the same token, if you're going to call into question the authority of the Scriptures because there are variant readings, even though it doesn't change the message is still the same. We still know what the original author wrote and what the meaning of the original author is on careful analysis. If that's still not good enough, then it's not good enough for us to accept the fact that although there are minor variations that don't affect the meaning, the Quran is still preserved. We're asking for consistency. If you're going to be consistent and reject the Bible because of variant readings, reject the Quran. And then there's even a bigger problem for the Muslim position. None of us believe that the Bible existed eternally. We believe it's a production of the Holy Spirit through human authors. That the Holy Spirit created the Scriptures through human authors in time and space. But you believe the Quran is the eternal speech of Allah. So which of the variants are actually eternal, part of that eternal tablet? Which of them? Are you telling us all the variants are part of the eternal speech of Allah? Every one of them originate from Allah's eternal speech? Is that what you're trying to convince us of? So the variant readings are more damaging to your position because of your belief that the Quran is eternal, uncreated. It's the uncreated speech of Allah. Which of the variants is identical to that eternal speech? Which of the 14 qira'at that you have is the actual replica, 100% duplicate, 100% exact replica of the eternal speech of Allah? Don't tell us all of them are. Especially when it was only compiled centuries after the fact on the basis of some scholar who believed that the chains were authentic and went back to a companion of Muhammad.
And we're just, and you know, that would be wonderful if they could produce that, which they can, of course, but we've been right now just asking, can you produce the evidence that what you have today is even the same exact word for word that Uthman rescinded? Even that. Well, anyways, let's go to the next caller. Maybe they can, and I'd love to hear a great explanation. You're on the air right now with Jesus or Muhammad. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. This is Manu.
Hello, man.